All right, picture this. Someone insults you. Maybe it's right in front of your friends or, your colleagues. Instantly, your heart just starts racing. Your face flushes hot. Every single cell in your body is practically screaming at you to jump in, defend yourself, and set the record straight. But now contrast that with someone standing right next to you who hears the exact same insult aimed at them, and they don't even blink. Same words, same incredibly tense situation, but completely different internal reactions. So what exactly do they know that you don't? Well, in this explainer, we're going to unpack the exact mechanics behind that kind of totally unbothered piece.
It really raises a fascinating question, doesn't it? Why do we let toxic people trigger us in the first place? I mean, think about the last time a passive-aggressive comment made you feel this urgent, almost desperate need to justify yourself. Maybe someone questioned your intelligence or kind of mocked a project you care deeply about, and you felt that massive, overwhelming surge of emotion to just correct them, to prove your point. Look, that instinct is entirely human, but here's the catch. It is exactly what manipulators are banking on.
The answer to why we get triggered actually lies in a pretty wild core paradox about conflict. See, there's a massive fundamental difference between trying to win an argument and feeding an emotional craving. The hidden truth about toxic interactions is that these provocateurs, they aren't actually attacking you to win a logical debate. Logic literally has nothing to do with it. They're attacking you because they are completely starving for an emotional reaction. Let's look a bit closer at what the provocateur is actually seeking here. They're not looking for a resolution or a compromise or some well-reasoned answer from you. Nah, they're hunting for emotional energy, validation, and this fleeting sense of power, things they simply cannot create for themselves internally, so they have to extract it from you. When you engage and fight back, you might genuinely think, hey, I'm standing up for myself. But the reality? Every sharp reply, every raised voice, every frustrated explanation you give is just fuel for them. It acts as the exact reward they were hunting for all along. It really boils down to this surprisingly simple reality. They don't want answers. They want sparks. Think of that coworker who deliberately raises his voice in a meeting, tossing out a leading comment because he knows your exact trigger and he just wants you to defend yourself publicly. Or, think of an ex sending a late-night text, casually throwing out a subtle insult wrapped up as a joke, just to see if you'll bite. They are literally throwing out bait, over and over again, just waiting for the spark of your reaction to light up their ego. So if reacting only feeds the fire and makes things worse, why in the world do we keep doing it? Honestly, it comes down to a deeply ingrained societal myth. We've been conditioned our whole lives to believe that silence equals weakness. We think that if you don't defend yourself, people will just walk all over you, right? And that letting an unfair insult slide somehow implies that you actually agree with it. So what do? We engage. We explain ourselves, we argue the facts, and we desperately try to make a completely irrational person understand our rational point of view. We think we're defending ourselves and proving our worth, but in reality, we are just feeding their emotional energy and handing them a map to our vulnerabilities. Listen, you simply cannot reason with someone who is emotionally invested in misunderstanding you. By explaining yourself and pouring your heart out, you're just giving them threads to pull. You are literally handing them a detailed map of your deepest insecurities. Because now they know exactly which buttons to push the next time to make you feel completely out of control. I want you to really, truly absorb this next point. You cannot win a game you refuse to play. Let that sink in. True power isn't found in how loudly you can respond, or how quickly you can fire back some witty comeback, or how dramatically you can storm out of a room. No way. True power is found when you stop treating their provocation like a game you're obligated to participate in. It's about being entirely, unshakably unmoved by someone else's chaos. Think of your emotional energy kind of like a Wi-Fi signal. No connection equals no drain. If they can't connect with your emotions, they absolutely cannot siphon your energy. And the alternative to getting sucked into their toxic vortex isn't to become aggressively cold or mean or totally disconnected. It's actually to master a state of being that we call strategically uninteresting. So, what does becoming strategically uninteresting mean? It means being completely present in the room, but utterly unreactive. It's refusing to give an emotional charge, but without building massive defensive walls or completely shutting down. This kind of detachment, it isn't about ignoring them or acting like some robot. It's about offering incredibly neutral, flavorless responses. When they throw an insult to provoke you, instead of jumping to defend yourself, you simply say, "Interesting perspective," or "I hear you,"
or even just a completely flat, unbothered, okay. And this brings us to the exact psychological tool therapists teach to handle emotional chaos, narcissism, and deep manipulation. It's called the gray rock method, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It's a technique where you make yourself as uninteresting, unresponsive, and unremarkable as literal gray rocks sitting on the ground specifically to neutralize toxic behavior. This is absolutely the ultimate field-tested strategy for reclaiming your personal peace and just starving out the conflict. So how do we actually build this practical defense system in our day-to-day lives? Well, it essentially comes down to 3 non-negotiable steps. Step 1, minimal emotion. Step 2, short answers. And step 3, neutral tone. You offer absolutely no explanations that they can twist against you and 0 justifications that they can attack. You remain visible in the interaction, sure, but you become completely unengaging.
Let's actually simulate a real conversation right now to see exactly how this works in practice. Imagine the provocateur leaning in, their voice laced with frustration and accusation, and they throw out this classic trap designed to make you justify yourself. Why are you always like this? This is pure, unadulterated bait. They are begging for you to say, like what? I'm not doing anything.
But instead, you deliver your gray rock response with total deadpan neutrality. You just say, I don't know. Notice how this utterly flat, super brief response completely removes the dramatic tension the provoker was expecting. You didn't attack them back, so they can't suddenly play the victim, and you didn't defend yourself, so they have absolutely nothing to grab onto and argue against. It's just a total conversational dead end.
Now, of course, they aren't going to give up immediately. They thrive on this stuff, remember? So here comes the escalation. Their tone gets a bit sharper. You're just going to ignore me? They quickly realize they aren't getting their usual emotional payout, so they try to poke the bear again, shifting tactics to make you feel guilty just to get that spark.
And your response? I'm listening. I just don't have much to add. You deliver this line with absolute, unshakable calm. You aren't being rude, you aren't being overtly dismissive, and you definitely haven't raised your voice. You are simply, firmly refusing to be their personal source of emotional sparks.
And doing this creates what we call the toxic starvation cycle. Here's exactly how it unfolds. Once you stop feeding the toxic pattern, they will naturally escalate their behavior to provoke a bigger reaction, which is exactly what we just saw in our little simulation. But when that escalation completely fails because you manage to stay perfectly neutral, they inevitably get bored. It might take a few tries, sure, but eventually they move on. The chaos starves. They have to go looking for their daily dose of drama elsewhere because you are simply no longer a viable source of fuel. Now, there is a critical distinction that most people completely miss about this method, and it is absolutely vital to understand. There is a massive fundamental difference between suppressing your emotions and choosing where to invest them. When you use the gray rock method, you can and you will still feel the anger, the intense frustration, and the hurt. This isn't about magically becoming numb, but you simply choose not to perform those very real feelings for someone who is just going to weaponize them against you. Real strength isn't about not feeling, it's choosing not to react.
Save your depth for people who've actually earned it. I really want you to take this philosophy away with you. Reserve your vulnerability, your deep, thoughtful explanations, and your heavy emotional investments for the relationships in your life that actually honor them. Give your absolute best self to the people who genuinely want to understand you. And everyone else, the people just looking for a fight, they get the gray rock. Ultimately, you realize that true peace isn't the absence of conflict, but the presence of choice. Mastering this technique is a profound shift because you finally realize something incredibly freeing. Their inability to regulate their own emotions is not your emergency to solve. Their desperate need for drama is not your responsibility. You get to choose what affects you. Which leads us to the ultimate power move. Becoming unbotherable makes you truly unstoppable. Why? Well, because you suddenly have an unfair advantage over everyone else who is just exhausted by pointless battles. While others are completely draining their daily energy trying to argue, defend, and prove themselves to people who frankly don't care, you are conserving your precious energy for what actually matters in your life. You aren't fighting better. You are powerfully refusing to fight at all. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to reflect on today. The next time the bait is thrown your way, and let's be real, it will be thrown, will you choose to engage and fight, or will you choose to be the gray rock? Remember, you do not owe anyone a reaction. Sometimes the most powerful reaction in the entire world is literally no reaction at all. Stay solid, stay still, and protect your peace.